The average student's graduate scholar is $30,000 in debt. Filling out the FAFSA gives you access to federal loans, grants, and scholarships that can help you cover the cost of higher education. Don't get stuck carrying debt.
Welcome to Happiness and the City. This is Barbara, and today I'd like to continue our themes focusing on beauty. Beauty is very important because today we have a situation of very painful conflicts connected with matters of image, beauty, appearance, and we need to find ways to restore honor to our sense of beauty other than through legal systems, rules and regulations that entail punitive measurements. Because one of the problems that there is so much pain around beauty is that today a lot of remedies around the issue of image is forced by courts. And I think there are many other better ways to restore beauty and to restore honor connected with beauty, because we associate beauty with honor. So when shaming comes, many people try to come to courts for remedies, but that doesn't restore beauty. It shames one side and doesn't really honor the other side. So let's listen to this song. It's Autumn Rose, Ernesto Cortázar on YouTube. You find many versions of it. And thanks for you bringing so much beauty on public waves in YouTube and other streaming resources. So let's listen to this amazing expression of beauty. So you have the examples here of extremely beautiful images, and what I wanted you to pay attention to is how peaceful those images are. So we have to rethink the entire way we measure beauty, because I think that we should develop standards in which beauty is just completely in the context of peace, peaceful images. Now, if we consider beauty to be measured and judged by system of courts, then by definition that tranquility and peaceful nature will not come to manifestation, because the courts have to decide between one side designing matters of beauty versus another side. So the other side, who would be losing in that context, will always be unhappy, and the tranquility and peace in the image of beauty will always be disturbed. And this is what we have today. There is so much strife around measures of beauty that we have to think seriously about how to remedy that strife in ways that creates peace and creates common and shared understanding of the nature of beauty and how it influences us positively, because it awakens within us the image of God. We all have within us the image of God. We are in the image of God, and we all yearn for it. We want to be connected to it. We want that image of God to be within us, perceived by other people. That is part of human nature. That is actually part of our divine nature. When we deal with matters of law of nature, there is a certain conflict there, because on one hand it is our nature to be in the image of God, but on the other hand, after the fall of Adam and Eve, nature can go into very imperfect ways, and the beauty gets impaired or sabotaged by some problems with law of nature, like illnesses, diseases. So we have to find ways to create standard that is so powerful that it gives hope to everybody, even those people who are undergoing some problems with beauty. I've had my own personal situation years ago when I was dealing with very dangerous injuries from a car accident, and that affected the beauty of my life and how I moved and how I appeared to other people. And I found way out of this by praying to God for a miracle, which He gave me 18 years ago. And that was a tremendous joy, because I won this war over damages in my life by turning to the perfection of beauty, which is the shape of our lives and the measures within our lives that are in Kingdom of God. So I believe that we have that remedy within us, and that we can receive it, and that is the best way to deal with any pain around matters of beauty, because God can recreate what is lost within us. He can recreate what is impaired within us, whereas human laws cannot do that. So I thought that when we focus our attention on beauty that is perfect, then we'll also learn to love one another. No matter how we look like, no matter what origin we are, there is something universal in beauty within all of us. And that perfection of beauty within every race, within every family, cannot be shifted from one place to another. It is unique in its own way. And that is what my recommendation is, that instead of creating that very painful standard in which one race compares itself to another race and then another race, and it just created horrible destruction in the way we perceive ourselves, and it's very difficult for people then to love one another. Whereas when we look at beauty outside of our own judgments, when we look beauty within, in the source of our creation, God Himself, then we start respecting each other because we see God's beauty within all His creatures. And I think that this is what I really would recommend for us. I wanted to play another beautiful song, Stranger in Paradise, as I want us to remember that we all come from paradise. We would like to go back there through that journey on the earth, and there are certain rules about it. All of you who know the Bible and the matters of salvation are expert on this, but we all have that memory of paradise within us. And paradise is also a place of perfect beauty. So that creates within us measures of expectation for beauty around us, in our surroundings, houses, gardens. And I think that is also very important to create peace and tranquility. Listen to this beautiful song. So you see in this beautiful video the surroundings, the circumstances of beauty. And that is another thing that we are striving to achieve, goodness. But the way we are doing this is today is very dividing. And today we have a situation with many companies that want to enforce certain standards of beauty in ways that create a lot of unhappiness. I think that instead of forcing certain measures of beauty in companies, in matters around money, finances, we should create images of beauty that promote tranquility, peace, harmony, and that will allow diverse people to fit in different set of circumstances in ways that are loving, affectionate, that create connections between them, understanding and communication that allows to express differences in ways that are not violent, that create the right measure of things and mutual satisfaction. Because using lawyers to force result is a form of violence. We should really understand that it's using force of law against the will of people who lose a particular case. So it has to be used very sparingly, only in cases in which there are no other alternatives. We have a very painful conflict in Google today, in which a group of employees wants to sue the company over matters of past differences in salary evaluations. Now, that is that's a circumstance of tranquility within the company. And the way to deal with this is to work things out within the company, or understand that there was no problem because we all sign contracts, we all have certain understanding of expectation in our employment. And when the company is not doing that well, we just go to another company. But when the company is doing very well and we suddenly want to get a part of it because it's successful, and then the methods that are used are violence by law, it is a form of disruption of tranquility and creates a situation of strife, even hatred, and a sense of being forced to do things just because the company is successful. That is not right. Another problem is around speech, what employees say within the context of company. Again, speech is part of our image in which we try to speak as beautifully as we can. So the search for beauty in speech is also part of search for beauty in the image of beauty. And I think that instead of punishing people because their speech is not beautiful, or their speech is somehow disagreeable, or contains matters in which we disagree, this is something to be solved by speech, by conversation, by discussions, sometimes by waiting for the person to be persuaded to change his or her mind. And yes, often it may take years, sometimes decades, when we learn things in the process of education. We are not the same after acquiring a lot of knowledge than we were before we had that knowledge. So we have to come back to the civilized way in which we deal with differences in speech and appearance. And the standard for beauty in speech, the standard for beauty in our ways, in our life, in truth around us, we should search for in Kingdom of God. We have that prayer that says, Thy kingdom come, that is request to God that His kingdom should come, and in His kingdom, of course, perfection of beauty in image and speech. So I appeal to stop punishing employees, stop firing them just because they express a point of view that some people disagree with. Instead of firing them, let them continue have income and let them avoid dishonor and degradation of unemployment, and that often leads to death. And instead, we should focus on ways of life and create circumstances of cooperation, understanding, communication, contact with all kinds of people, whether we agree with them or disagree with them. And I think that when we look for that standard of beauty in speech and beauty in image in God Himself, in Kingdom of God, and love Himself, life Himself, truth Himself, that will come to us because God forgives the sins and then He heals us from them. So He would not fire a person just because the person at that point doesn't understand how not to sin. So if God is so patient, and if God is so slow to anger, if God is so loving, why should some companies be cruel and cut people off just because they say something they may regret later on? Or they may learn new facts a few years later and change their minds. So let's come back to beauty in image and speech that is grounded in divine love.